You are an ornithologist, naturalist, writer, and poet. Your books, The Home Place and Sparrow Envy, both of which capture your love affair with nature, continue to be beloved reads for so many. How have you learned to combine conservation science with personal, historical, and cultural narratives of nature? When you get an idea for a story or poem, what are the steps you take to craft it into something that is creative and meaningful?
Lauren, it's all of those things, all of those labels of who it is that I am, the ornithologist, the bird watcher, the conservationist, ecologist, poet, writer, all of those things converge really around identity. And you and I are, as bird watchers, right? We're
Yes,
always out
yes.
identifying things, but the cultural aspects come into identity of who it is that I am as a black man in the South, and so that's one of what I like to think of as the axes of discovery, or even of kind of a scaffolding of how I operate as a professional. So identity, place, and nature. So thinking about those three things. So thinking about my identity as, well, a southerner, a southern black man, um, an ornithologist, an ecologist, a poet, but then thinking about place, right? So then place blends into that in terms of the South. I mean, I'm all over the place, but the South is home. But then thinking about wild places. But then that third aspect of so identity, place, and nature, birds, wild birds. So all of that comes into almost anything that I do, and that's the science of me, and that's the art of me, and I think it's who we all are, right? That
Yes.
the aspects of what you do, and and climbing ladders, to investigate what's going on with red cockaded woodpeckers.
Yes, yes, yes.
You know, there's an art to being who you are, and there's a science to it. And so I like to think about first person as the data we know best. So when you go in the field, you know who you're going to be on that ladder.
Right.
Now, you're trying to get to know the birds and the place. How do you do that? You do that by the science, by collecting the data, but you also do that on a particular day. It might be a not so good day everywhere else, but you get into the piney woods and that smell, that aroma hits you.
Yes.
What is that like?
Yes. The smell, I mean, the sounds, it takes you away really from everything else that you have on your mind. Just being out there in the quiet, but not really quiet, right? But you're out there, you're hearing the wind blow, you're hearing the wiregrass, sway back and forth. You're hearing all of these wonderful birds. I mean, being one of the diverse, ecosystems out there, the longleaf pine ecosystem, it's you're just at that moment you're just so appreciative of nature as a whole, and you're just like, wow, like this is mother nature, like this is nature, just experiencing all of these amazing creatures, and the plants, the animals, the habitat as a whole. It's remarkable. It really, really is.
And that's the art of you,
Yes,
you know?
yes, yes.
And understanding the art of you is, that's critical. And so you'll write it in your dissertation, you post it, which I think is important.
Yes.
But so taking the art of you
Yes.
and what that scene you just described, there's ecology, there's psychology, but there's also a spiritual nature to it. And so all of that goes into what I write. It goes into a poem. We're out here in this space, and I've written lots of poems about shrikes and grasshopper sparrows and eastern meadowlarks and flocks of murmurating cowbirds, and maybe birds in that flock that I couldn't identify, but I could identify with.
Yes.
So that's how I try to bring that to fore, and hopefully the end result is that I've taken some data in here, but I've also taken data in here.
There you go. There you go.
And that comes out hopefully in some way that gets people thinking and feeling.
And so, talking about poetry, you have a sensational way with words. Your poetry is memorable. In fact, one of my favorite pieces is 9 Rules of the Black Birdwatcher. You know how to combine humor and intellect to speak on social issues, particularly when it comes to Black individuals and these risks and perceptions of us in the outdoors. How have you learned to become comfortable with pushing the envelope when it comes to talking about these sensitive topics?
Wow, Lauren, pushing the envelope. Actually, I got tired of being in the envelope. I got tired of being sort of shut up inside other people's or society's expectations and sealed inside. So I see it really as not having much of a choice if you want to be free. So I think the poet's responsibility, part of it lies in urgency, and there's nothing more urgent than being Black in America. So, and especially in some of the spaces where we are. So, sitting where we are, for example, the people out here know me, but if I was in some strange place, a Black man alongside the road with binoculars just out looking, people might not perceive me the same way. And so I think people need to understand that as I am watching, is that as we are watching, sometimes we're being watched. I equate it to almost like having the eye spots of like a ferruginous pygmy owl or something like that on the back of our heads, and that we have to be consciously and constantly conscious of where we are and how we're being perceived. So poetry gives me an opportunity, and the 9 Rules for the Black Birdwatcher gave me an opportunity to use satire to get a point across, because ultimately, no one wants to be beat across the head with a point, as cogent as the point may be. And so it's also important to give a little bit of medicine with the sugar. So in that way, I want people to maybe think about laughing, and then they laugh, but then think about why they had to think about why they laughed.
Right. And so, for example, one of my favorite lines from that poem, but this is really, really real: never wear a hoodie, ever.
Yeah. That came from Trayvon Martin, and that was so real and so fresh when I wrote that. It was not far removed from that murder, and I was thinking about being out as a birder and how I am perceived. And so does that mean I need to wear a Tilly hat and a khaki vest and big pocket cargo pants? I hope not, because I don't want to do that. I want to be who I am, but it's also something that we have to think about, that you have to think about when you're out. I mean, things that other people take for granted, you can't. We can't.
So, Drew, walk me through the exact moment when you found out that you were a 2022 MacArthur Fellow. How did it feel to be named alongside so many ground-shaking, well-deserving individuals like Robin Wall Kimmerer, renowned author of Braiding Sweetgrass?
Unbelievable. And I lost it. Well, before I lost it, there was just silence. And then I lost it. And there was some sort of weird, guttural, primal scream, and then tears. and still disbelief. So, it's been I like to think of it, Lauren, as it's validation, because we're always evaluating ourselves. I talked about first person being the data that we know best, but we're always evaluating ourselves. And unfortunately, imposter syndrome is part of what we have to deal with.
Most definitely.
And for BIPOC, imposter syndrome is unfortunately part of the landscape because society is constantly, again, putting you in an envelope and telling you where you belong or what you should do and what you should not do. Somebody probably says, Lauren, black women don't climb trees looking for woodpeckers out. Why would you do that?
Yeah. Or just people in just disbelief that, wow, there's a black woman out here climbing trees and chasing woodpeckers. That's the way I like to describe it. Whenever I talk about my work, that's the first thing I say. I'm like, yep, I climb trees and I chase woodpeckers.
And people are like, really?
And people are like, what? What does that look like?
And then you say, let me show you.
Yes, yes.
So that, when you get an award, or not even someone says, good work, right? And they recognize what you're doing is valuable, that's a tailwind. And that tailwind and that thermal that lifts you into this position of going forward or maybe soaring and not having to flap as hard, that's a critical thing. So that's what the MacArthur has done to this point, but still there are moments of disbelief. And I'm sort of like, so what are the strings here? And
Yes.
So it's sort of like a personal emancipation proclamation. And, I can, and when people say, well, you're doing what? And I haven't said this, but I almost feel like saying, well, I'm being a MacArthur Fellow is what I'm doing. And honestly, that sounds really pretty arrogant, but for a few people, it's almost like you need to say that. And so when that time comes, and as you become Dr. Pharr, there'll be a time where you're like, you know what, I don't need that doctor to be called that.
Yeah.
But you know what? Hang on to it. You've earned it. And it's validation of your work and what you have done. Because there will be people who try to take that away from you. I say that to say to you to make sure that you hold on to what you have worked for and don't let anybody take it from you. And that MacArthur, one of the things they tell you beautifully, because all of us are sitting there in disbelief on the call. We're like, I didn't believe it. I still don't believe it. And they say, well, when the check comes, you'll believe it. You say, no, I don't believe it, because you're going to, well, then Uncle Sam's going to come. But you have to, they said, we don't make mistakes. And they said, the expectation is that you just continue to do you. You know how powerful that is for somebody to say, do you?
Do you?
Do you? So that's the long form of my reaction, but it's still disbelief, it's gratitude, and it's an opportunity to literally once in a lifetime to leverage good into good, hopefully.
So for me, I remember the exact day, the exact moment when I decided that I want to be a wildlife biologist. I want to go into wildlife. And as I was looking, into grad schools and, potential schools of interest, I stumbled across your profile on Clemson University's faculty page. How does it feel to be a mentor, to be an advisor, to know that when you win, we in the BIPOC community, we win? How does that feel? What made you? What has been your experiences being a mentor to students and eventually earning you the title of Alumni Distinguished Professor of Wildlife Ecology?
Wow. It's been humbling in ways, Lauren, because impact is something sometimes that's not felt except on sort of the outer edge of the ripple. So, in the classroom on any given day, you may not realize it, or with students, you may not realize it. But my first my first black student, and a wonderful professional now, Dr. Keenan Adams. You need to meet Keenan.
Yes.
Keenan Adams taught me a lot. He came to me for his master's degree, and then he stayed on for his PhD. And his master's was sort of easy, sort of standard, but we began to develop a relationship. And then his PhD was, it was a little more difficult in that, we were both maturing and evolving as people. But one of the things that I think helps me as a mentor is to be open to learning from students or anybody else. So to understand that other people's life experiences and their expectations aren't necessarily my life experiences and my expectations. And so I always want to keep that in mind, with everyone. But when it comes to BIPOC, to us and how we relate in this profession, there are still so few of us that I think there has to be a certain intensive attention paid to that. So you're very kind in saying when I win, we all win. But I feel like my career has been in so many ways buoyed and supported and made by those people who, you may co-author a paper with, but they were out there in the field. Keenan was down there in Bainbridge, Georgia. Marla Hamilton, my first black female student, Marla was out at McIntyre Air Station doing those bird surveys. And so what they brought to the table was giving me the opportunity to somehow be a part of their lives. And then seeing them now as professionals doing wonderful work and impacting others in their own way, then you begin to feel the effects of those outer ripples. And that to me has been some of the great joy in seeing them do what they do, seeing you doing what you're doing. To have a voice now means that it's important that you communicate with people where they are, and I know that you're doing that. And to be able to take an Instagram post or a Facebook post or a tweet, and to take a tweet and use it to translate the tweets that you're hearing in the field, that's critical. So I'm learning from you. And so that, again, is sort of what happens to those ripples is they eventually go out and they dampen against something. But what, I think the science will tell you is that there's a reverb. And so if you listen closely and pay attention, you can feel that reverb. And so even us sitting here today, it's a reverb I'm feeling, and I'm grateful for that.
Yes, yes. I'd like to end today with a quote from you. I want my work to inspire. I want it to inspire head, I want it to inspire heart, and I want it to inspire some action for a better future. There is no doubt that your work has and continues to inspire so many people. So I'm curious, what is next for you? Any new or upcoming projects or adventures? Is there anything that you wish to do that you haven't done yet that you hope to do in the future?
So much, but then just to have time to sit and watch, right? It's this place is sort of special to me, and being able to share that with you is important. But to continue to write with the same depth and urgency, and to have somebody notice. So thank you for noticing.
Thank you for sharing.